The fluorescent hum of the single bare bulb in Elena's kitchen was a constant, irritating companion. It cast a harsh glow on the empty shelves of the pantry, particularly on the spot where the baby formula used to sit. 3 days. 3 agonizing days since Leo's last proper meal. Her 6-month-old son, usually a bundle of gurgles and kicks, lay limp in his makeshift crib, a laundry basket lined with a threadbare blanket. His cries had long since faded into soft, whimpering breaths that tore at Elena's soul. Each shallow rise and fall of his tiny chest was a desperate plea she couldn't answer. Her own stomach gnawed with hunger, but that was a distant discomfort, overshadowed by the searing agony of her baby's need. She had tried everything: watered-down rice cereal that Leo simply refused, tiny sips of lukewarm water that did nothing to quell his hunger. Shame burned in her cheeks as she thought of the friends and family she had already borrowed from, promises of repayment now hollow echoes. Their silence when she called spoke volumes. She couldn't ask again. Not now, not ever. Her phone felt heavy in her trembling hand. There was one last resort, one person she swore she'd never contact again: Leo's father. He'd disappeared before she even showed, a ghost in the wind, leaving her with nothing but a burgeoning belly and a mountain of fear. Swallowing her pride, a bitter metallic taste in her mouth, she pulled up his old number. Her thumb hovered over the send button, a silent battle raging within her. "He owes us this much," a voice whispered. "No, he owes us nothing," another countered. But Leo's whimper decided it. Elena's fingers moved with a life of their own, spurred by a primal instinct to protect her child. She typed, the words forming a raw, unvarnished plea that left her feeling exposed and vulnerable. "I know you don't want to hear from me, but Leo hasn't eaten in 3 days. I just need $50 for formula. Please, I'm begging you." Each word was a tiny shard of her broken heart, laid bare for a man who probably didn't care. Her vision blurred, tears stinging her eyes, blurring the harsh edges of her tiny, cluttered apartment. The silence after she hit send was deafening, amplified by the frantic beat of her own heart. She pictured his reaction: annoyance, perhaps a dismissive chuckle, then silence. He wouldn't care. Why would he? He hadn't cared when she told him she was pregnant. He hadn't cared when she reached out for help the first time. The weight of her situation pressed down on her, an invisible hand pushing her further into the mattress. The desperation was a cold, unyielding knot in her stomach. She imagined opening the refrigerator, seeing the empty shelves, the solitary, half-eaten jar of pickles that had been her dinner for 2 nights. She imagined the vacant stare of the cashier at the corner store, the judgment in their eyes as she tried to explain. $50. It might as well have been $1 million. Her savings account was a phantom. Her part-time job at the diner barely covered rent, let alone the insatiable needs of a growing baby. Her pride was long gone, replaced by a hollow ache. All that mattered now was Leo. His tiny life depended on this desperate, humiliating plea. 40 stories above the city's chaotic symphony, Cyrus Sterling sat in his penthouse office, the panoramic view of the skyline a mere backdrop to his thoughts. His chair, a bespoke masterpiece of Italian leather and ergonomic engineering, cradled him in luxury. He owned islands, not just one, but several. He'd even named a star for his niece last Christmas, simply because he could. Money was an abstraction, a tool, a game. His phone buzzed, a jarring interruption to the meticulous order of his day. An unknown number. He frowned, a slight furrow in his perfectly sculpted brow. His finger hovered over the screen, ready to dismiss it as spam, another phishing attempt from the digital ether. He received hundreds of these a week, all promising riches, demanding small sums, preying on the naive. This one, however, caught his cynical eye. I know you don't want to hear from me, but Leo hasn't eaten in 3 days. I just need $50 for formula. Please, I'm begging you." A faint, almost imperceptible smirk touched his lips. The classic starving child routine, he thought. Brazen, but predictable. His first instinct was to delete it, to block the number, and forget it ever existed. But a sliver of detached amusement, a desire to see the scammer play their hand, took hold. It was a novel form of entertainment, a break from the monotonous grind of multi-billion-dollar deals. Cyrus's decision was made with a chilling detachment. He opened his Venmo app, the digital transaction a mere flick of his wrist. $60. He chose 60 just to throw them off, a little extra to make the scammer think he was a soft touch. He wanted to see how far they'd push, how many more sob stories they'd concoct. He leaned back in his chair, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Let's see the little rat dance," he mused. His gaze drifted over the city that lay spread out beneath him like a glittering toy. The thought of someone so desperate, so audacious to try and extract money from him was almost fascinating in its audacity. He imagined the person on the other end, probably some bored teenager in a basement, hoping to strike gold. He dismissed the whole affair, returning to the intricate details of a new venture in sustainable energy. Minutes ticked by, turning into a quarter of an hour. Then, just as he was about to forget the whole silly diversion, his phone buzzed again. He glanced down, expecting another plea, another story, perhaps an escalation of the initial request. But what he saw made him pause. His cynical amusement evaporated, replaced by a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years, genuine surprise. The announcement wasn't a text, it was a photo, a low-resolution, unfiltered snapshot that hit him with the force of a physical blow. The image that flashed across Cyrus's screen was stark, raw, and utterly devoid of artifice. It wasn't a professional stock photo, carefully curated to evoke sympathy. It was a close-up, dimly lit, almost desperate in its authenticity. A young woman, her face a canvas of exhaustion and despair, stared out from the frame. Dark circles, deep as bruises, shadowed her eyes, and her skin, pale and drawn, seemed stretched taut over prominent cheekbones. Her hair, unkempt, framed a face that spoke volumes of hardship. In her frail arms, nestled against her chest, was a baby. Its eyes were closed in sleep, but its tiny form looked disturbingly small, almost fragile in the woman's embrace. The innocence of the sleeping infant starkly contrasted with the profound weariness etched on Elena's face. The caption beneath the photo was equally devoid of expectation, a simple statement of fact and a hesitant offer. "Thank you. I'm heading to the store now. If you want to see your son, I'm at the Terrace Projects, Building C, Apt 4. I won't ask for more, I promise." Curse felt a strange clenching in his chest, a sensation he hadn't experienced in decades. This wasn't a scam. This wasn't entertainment. This was real. The crushing weight of the woman's misery, the undeniable vulnerability of the baby, the stark reality of her address, Terrace Projects, all collided in his mind. The thought that he had initially dismissed her as a mere charlatan, a playtime for his cynical amusement, filled him with a sudden, unsettling shame. The sophisticated, detached amusement that usually governed Cyrus's decisions shattered. The photo had been a cold splash of reality, forcing him to confront a world so far removed from his own gilded existence it felt like a different planet. This isn't a game, he thought, the previous cynicism now a bitter aftertaste. The woman, Elena, was not a scammer. The baby, Leo, was not a prop. They were real, and they were suffering. A profound sense of urgency, an almost visceral need to do something, surged through him. He didn't call his assistant, didn't summon his driver, didn't even pause to gather his thoughts. This was personal, a direct affront to his own humanity. He grabbed the keys to his sleek silver sports car, a vehicle that cost more than most people's homes, and strode out of his office, leaving behind the hushed opulence of his penthouse. The drive through the city was a blur, his mind racing. He bypassed the usual high-end boutiques and exclusive stores, heading for the nearest 24-hour superstore, the kind he hadn't stepped foot in decades. The neon glow of the sign felt alien, the bustling aisles a stark contrast to his usual secluded shopping experiences. But he didn't care. His only focus was on filling the void, on rectifying his colossal mistake. He felt a strange mixture of adrenaline and a burgeoning sense of purpose, a feeling far more profound than any business deal had ever given him. Cyrus entered the superstore like a man on a mission, a force of nature in a custom-tailored suit. He didn't bother with a shopping cart. He grabbed 3 flatbed trolleys, the kind usually reserved for bulk purchases by small businesses. His eyes, usually cool and calculating, scanned the aisles with a newfound intensity. Baby formula, every brand, every variety. He grabbed them by the armful, tossing them onto the trolleys. Diapers, giant boxes of every size, from newborn to toddler. Wipes, creams, baby shampoo, tiny onesies, soft blankets that felt like clouds, rattles, plush toys, books with bright, cheerful pictures. He didn't discriminate. If it was for a baby, it went into the cart. Other shoppers stared, bewildered, at the impeccably dressed man furiously clearing out the baby aisle. Cyrus barely noticed them. He was vaguely aware of the staggering amount he was accumulating, but the cost was utterly irrelevant. He even added a solid oak crib, a changing table, and a sturdy high chair, reasoning that they couldn't possibly have adequate furniture. At the checkout, the cashier's eyes widened at the sheer volume of his purchases. Cyrus slammed his black titanium credit card onto the counter. "I need a delivery truck," he stated, his voice firm. "Now. Arrange for it to follow my car. I need this delivered immediately." The manager, alerted by the unusual request, quickly complied, recognizing the sheer buying power in front of him. Cyrus felt a strange lightness, a sense of righting a profound wrong, as he headed back to his car. The sleek silver sports car, usually reserved for winding coastal roads or high-speed dashes to private airfields, now navigated the labyrinthine streets of the terrace projects. The polished chrome and gleaming paint stood out like a beacon of opulence in a landscape of weathered brick, broken windows, and overgrown weeds. Cyrus had never been to a place like this before. His world was one of manicured lawns, gated communities, and exclusive members' clubs. The air here was different, tinged with exhaust fumes and the faint smell of stale food. He felt a prickle of unease, not from fear, but from the stark contrast, the brutal reality of a life he had only ever seen on news reports. Behind him, a white delivery truck, overloaded with baby supplies, lumbered slowly, following his expensive taillights. He clutched the address Elena had sent, the small, handwritten note a tangible link to the desperate plea that had started it all. Building C, Apt 4. The numbers felt foreign on his tongue. He parked the car, its expensive engine purring softly in the sudden silence. As he stepped out, heads turned. Children playing in the dirt paused their games, their wide eyes following his every move. Adults on stoops stopped their conversations, their gazes a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Cyrus felt exposed, alien, but a stubborn resolve hardened his jaw. He had made a mistake, and he was here to fix it. Cyrus walked with purpose up the worn concrete stairs, the chipped paint and faint scent of disinfectant doing little to mask the underlying odor of age and neglect. He found Building C, then Apartment 4. He took a deep breath, an unfamiliar tremor running through him. This wasn't a boardroom negotiation, nor a high-stakes deal. This was far more significant. He knocked, the sound surprisingly loud in the quiet hallway. The pause felt eternal. Then, the door opened a crack, revealing a sliver of Elena's face. Her eyes, still shadowed with exhaustion, widened slightly as she took in the sight of him. She was holding a baby bottle, clearly just having returned from the store with the $60 he had sent. You're not him," she whispered, her voice barely audible, laced with a mixture of confusion and a faint, renewed flicker of disappointment. Cyrus felt a pang of guilt. Of course, she expected Leo's father. He cleared his throat. "I'm not," he confirmed, his voice uncharacteristically soft, gentler than it had been in years. His gaze drifted past her, into the dim interior of the apartment. He saw the peeling wallpaper, the sparse furniture, the mattress on the floor that served as a bed. It was exactly as he had imagined, yet infinitely more real, more heartbreaking. "But the truck is downstairs," he added, his eyes meeting hers, trying to convey a sincerity he rarely had to express. A flicker of hope, fragile as a butterfly wing, appeared in her eyes. Elena's eyes, wide with disbelief, slowly registered his words. "The truck is downstairs." It took a moment for the meaning to sink in, to reconcile the image of this impeccably dressed stranger with the reality of a delivery truck overflowing with baby supplies. Her gaze darted from his face to the window, as if to confirm. "A truck?" she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. Before he could elaborate, the rhythmic thud of feet on the stairs signaled the arrival of the delivery men, their arms laden with boxes. The sight of the endless stream of diapers, formula, blankets, and toys completely overwhelmed her. Tears, hot and fast, finally spilled down her cheeks. They weren't tears of sorrow, but of pure, unadulterated relief. Cyrus watched silently as the men carefully placed the items inside her tiny apartment, transforming the barren space into a veritable baby store. He saw the way Elena's hands trembled as she picked up a soft plush toy, the way she clutched a brand new can of formula to her chest like a precious jewel. He watched her feed Leo, who, having received his first proper meal in days, was now eagerly sucking on the bottle. A profound sense of quiet satisfaction settled over Cyrus, a feeling far more rewarding than closing any multi-million-dollar deal. "Why did you help?" she finally asked, her voice thick with emotion, her eyes meeting his. He looked at Leo, then back at Elena. "I thought it was a game," he admitted, his gaze softening. "Then I saw the photo. No one should have to be that brave or that alone." In the weeks that followed, the sight of Cyrus Sterling's luxurious car and the terrace projects became less of an anomaly, more of an unusual but regular occurrence. He didn't just drop off supplies, he showed up. He didn't just throw money at the problem, he sought to understand it. Elena, initially wary, slowly began to trust him. She saw not a distant CEO, but a man who listened, truly listened to her struggles. She told him about her minimum wage job at the diner, the endless hours, the constant exhaustion, the way her meager pay vanished before it even hit her account, eaten up by overdue bills and the rising cost of living. She spoke of her isolation, the shame of asking for help, the fear for Leo's future. Cyrus, in turn, found himself deeply affected by her story. He, who had always believed in self-reliance and the power of ambition, saw the cracks in a system that could leave a good, hard-working woman so utterly helpless. He brought a lawyer from his firm, not to intimidate, but to help her clear her debts, to navigate the confusing maze of social services she had been too overwhelmed to tackle. He arranged for a nutritionist to visit, not just for Leo, but for Elena, whose own health was clearly suffering. He made sure she had nourishing food, not just for the baby, but for herself. He didn't just give her fish, he taught her how to fish, metaphorically speaking. He earned her trust not with grand gestures, but with consistent, quiet support and a genuine desire to uplift her. One crisp autumn morning, Cyrus arrived at Elena's apartment, a different kind of excitement bubbling beneath his usually stoic demeanor. He handed her a set of keys, the silver gleaming in her palm. They weren't for a mansion or a penthouse. They were for a quiet townhouse on the outskirts of the city, nestled beside a sprawling green park. "It's not an island, but it's yours," he said, a rare, genuine smile gracing his lips. Elena stared at the keys, her heart pounding. She had never owned anything so substantial, so permanent. Yours and Leo's, he clarified, sensing her hesitation. It has a sun-drenched nursery, a backyard, and a pantry that will never be empty. The townhouse was modest by Sterling standards, but to Elena, it was a palace. Sunlight streamed through large windows, illuminating freshly painted walls. The nursery was already set up with the oak crib he had bought, soft rugs and shelves filled with books and toys. For the first time, Elena felt a sense of peace she hadn't known since before Leo's birth. It was more than a house. It was a sanctuary, a fresh start. "I don't know how I can ever thank you," she whispered, tears blurring her vision once more. "You don't owe me anything," he replied, his voice gentle. "Consider it an investment in a future king and a remarkable queen." He knew this was just the first step. He wanted to do more, to ensure her and Leo's future was not only secure, but thriving. Cyrus wasn't one to do things by halves. He saw Elena's intelligence, her resilience, her fierce determination to provide for Leo. He knew she deserved more than a diner job. One afternoon, after Elena and Leo had settled into their new home, Cyrus offered her a proposition. "I have an opening in my administrative department," he began, his tone professional yet warm. "It's an entry level, but there's room for growth. You're bright, you're organized, and you're a quick learner. The salary would be enough to comfortably support you and Leo." Elena's jaw dropped. A job at Sterling Industries? The thought was unimaginable. She who had struggled to make ends meet, working for one of the most powerful men in the world? Her immediate thought, however, was about Leo. "But what about Leo?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "I can't afford childcare." Cyrus smiled. "That's already been taken care of." He then unveiled his next surprise, a plan that truly encapsulated his unique blend of business acumen and newfound compassion. He explained that he had renovated a suite on his executive floor, just a few doors down from his own office. "It's a nursery," he said, "fully equipped. And I've hired a nanny, a wonderful woman named Maria, who will care for Leo while you work. He'll be safe, happy, and just steps away from you." Elena was speechless, overwhelmed by the sheer generosity and thoughtfulness of his offer. This wasn't charity. This was an opportunity, a chance to reclaim her life, to build a future for herself and her son. The first day at Sterling Industries was a whirlwind for Elena. The sleek, modern architecture, the hushed efficiency of the staff, the breathtaking views from the executive floor. It was a world away from the greasy diner and the cramped apartment. But the most comforting sight was the custom-designed nursery just down the hall from Cyrus's immense office. It was a haven of soft colors, plush rugs, and gentle light. Maria, the kind-faced nanny, greeted her with a warm smile, instantly putting Elena at ease. Leo, after a moment of wide-eyed curiosity, settled happily into a playpen filled with bright new toys. Elena would check on him during her breaks, her heart swelling with gratitude each time she saw him gurgling happily, completely content under Maria's loving care. Knowing he was so close, so well cared for, allowed her to focus on her work with a clarity and dedication she hadn't thought possible. Cyrus, true to his word, was a fair and supportive boss. He mentored her, guiding her through the complexities of corporate administration, patiently answering her questions. He wasn't just her employer, he was a silent guardian, a benevolent force that had irrevocably altered her life and the future that awaited her. The other executives, initially intrigued by the presence of a baby on their floor, quickly adapted, often peeking into the nursery with amused smiles. Leo, in his own way, became the unofficial mascot of the executive suite, a tiny beacon of joy and humanity in a world of high-powered business. Years passed. Elena blossomed at Sterling Industries, proving herself to be an invaluable asset. She rose through the ranks, her confidence soaring with each promotion. Leo, no longer a frail infant, grew into a bright, curious, and energetic boy. He practically grew up in the executive nursery, becoming familiar with the quiet hum of the office, the friendly faces of the staff, and the comforting presence of Maria. He often toddled into Cyrus's office, a tiny whirlwind of energy, fearlessly exploring the vast space, while Cyrus, to the surprise of his colleagues, would patiently engage with him, even read him stories from picture books. Cyrus, once the epitome of detached power, found his life immeasurably enriched by Elena and Leo. He had discovered a joy, a purpose that his billions could never buy. He was no longer just a CEO. He was a mentor, a protector, and in a way a part of their family. Elena, strong and independent, had built a new life not as a charity case, but as a successful woman who had earned her place. On Leo's 10th birthday, they celebrated in the townhouse. Cyrus was there, not as a guest, but as family. As Leo blew out the candles, Elena looked at Cyrus, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. The wrong number had not been a mistake, it had been destiny. A desperate plea had forged an unbreakable bond, transforming a life of despair into a future filled with hope, love, and the unexpected joy of an unconventional yet perfectly whole family. If this story touched you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that inspire, teach, and entertain. Until next time, bye!